Welcome to The Explainer. We usually look at history from the top down. We focus on the famous generals, the presidents, the grand declarations. But today, we're going to flip that entirely and look at the birth of the United States right from the ground up. We are exploring the fascinating lives of John and Hannah Underhill of New Hampshire. We aren't just reading off a dry genealogy record today. We're actually using this one family as a vibrant, living lens to view the incredible transformation of the American colonies into a completely independent republic.
Okay, let's dive into this. I want you to imagine, just for a second, experiencing the rugged, untamed frontier, the boiling tensions with Britain, and the brutal reality of the American Revolution, all from inside the walls of one single household. How did everyday, ordinary people navigate a world that was literally turning upside down? Well, John and Hannah's story spans the final decades of colonial rule, the chaos of a continental war, and the hopeful yet incredibly tough expansion of a brand new nation.
Part 1. Colonial Roots in New England.
Well, before they became a crucial part of the American founding generation, John and Hannah actually grew up in two completely different colonial worlds. John Underhill was born in 1745 up in Chester, New Hampshire. Now, Chester back then was a really rugged, thriving Scots-Irish Protestant settlement. It was full of independent-minded farmers who heavily prized self-sufficiency. Hannah Colby, on the flip side, was born right around the same time but down in Amesbury, Massachusetts. And 1740s Amesbury was a prosperous, bustling town on the Merrimack River, totally famous for its mills and craftsmen. Her family eventually moved north to Chester, probably drawn by the promise of cheap land. I just love this contrast. We literally see the rugged agricultural frontier merging with this industrious mill-town background coming together right there in New Hampshire.
Part 2. Building a Frontier Family.
By the late 1760s, these two worlds unite. They get married around 1767, and that really marks the start of their grand shared adventure. I want to ground us in the actual physical reality of their lives for a moment. Josephine C. Frost, who put together the Underhill genealogy, describes their Chester home as being near the brick schoolhouse on the opposite side of the road a little to the southwest. Isn't that just a brilliant detail? It doesn't just give us a spot on a map, it plops the Underhill family right into the beating heart of their community, literally right next to the very building where the next generation of American citizens is going to be educated. March of 1774. This is when John and Hannah make their ultimate stake in the frontier. They buy the 60-acre homestead of Hannah's late father for £165. This was lot number 40. Now really think about that date for a second. 1774. They are putting down deep, permanent roots, financially and emotionally, buying the very land Hannah likely grew up on, just 2 years before the Declaration of Independence. They were building this quiet, private future at the exact moment a highly public nation was being fiercely debated. And this brilliantly illustrates that incredible timing. Look at the years between 1770 and 1779. John and Hannah welcomed 6 kids: Joseph, Amos, Nancy, John Jr., Susan, and Jonathan. Notice what else is happening at the exact same time. Hannah's childbearing years perfectly mirror the exact incubation period of the United States. While the Boston Massacre, Lexington and Concord, and the drafting of the Constitution were dominating the headlines, Hannah was at home, literally bringing the very first generation of true American citizens into the world. But as we all know, the revolution wasn't just a fiery political debate in a tavern. It was a physical, bloody war that demanded massive participation. So how did this totally ordinary citizen soldier, this local farmer and father of a rapidly growing family, suddenly get thrust right into the heart of a continental war?
Part 3. The Revolutionary Warriors.
When the call finally came, John Underhill, like so many guys in his community, put down his farm tools and picked up a musket. Let's trace how this escalated through the crucial summer of 1777. In July, John enlists as a corporal under General John Stark. They march out west to link up with the Northern Continental Army. On August 16th, John is thrown straight into the absolute crucible of the Battle of Bennington. And on that very day, literally in the heat of one of the most pivotal engagements of the entire war, John gets a battlefield promotion from corporal to sergeant. By September, his stint is done, and he's discharged to go home.
Now, why does this specific battle matter so much?
Well, at Bennington, Stark's militia completely crushed a Hessian detachment sent out by the British. This stunning victory severely crippled British supply lines and directly set the stage for the massive American victory at Saratoga just 2 months later. And Saratoga, remember, is the battle that actually brought France into the war. It's just a perfect reminder that the survival of the United States wasn't just secured by some grand strategy from generals, but by ordinary farmers like John directly confronting a global empire.
But we really have to pause and remember the staggering physical toll of this ditty. During that brief 1777 campaign, John traveled 192 miles. Imagine that, marching 192 miles on foot through rugged, heavily forested New England wilderness, hauling all your gear, constantly anticipating battle, all to defend a country that barely even existed yet on paper. And for his incredible service, those grueling marches, the actual combat, and his battlefield promotion, John was paid exactly £13, 14 shillings, and 8 pence. Yeah, you heard that right. It's an incredibly modest sum, to put it lightly, but honestly, it's a powerful reminder to us of the immense financial and personal sacrifices these frontier families were making. They absolutely weren't doing it to get rich. They were doing it to secure their freedom and protect their community. And his duty didn't even end there. In 1780, he answered the call again for the Coos campaign. This meant another 100-mile march north, right to the remote, dangerous edge of New Hampshire bordering Canada. What really stands out here is that John was one of only 3 men explicitly entrusted to distribute travel funds to the other soldiers. That right there shows the deep, unwavering trust his community placed in him. It also highlights the lingering threats that remained on the northern edge of the colonies long after the main theater of the war had moved down south.
Part 4. Life in the New Republic.
After the war, winning independence was one thing. Actually building a life in the new republic was a whole other beast. It was a time filled with incredible promise, but also bittersweet, rugged realities. Sadly, in September of 1791, Hannah passed away. She was only 46 years old. We really need to reflect on her immense unsung heroism. While John was marching hundreds of miles and fighting Hessians, Hannah was the anchor. She was at home raising 6 children and managing a frontier farm through the darkest, most resource-scarce years of the Revolution. Her endurance is absolutely every bit as foundational to the American story as John's military service. Following Hannah's death, John eventually makes some strategic moves for his remaining years. In 1801, he sells that beloved Chester farm for $600. That exact same year, he buys a new farm over in Plainfield, New Hampshire for $700. Then, fast forward to 1806, he formally conveys that Plainfield property to his youngest son, Jonathan, for exactly what he paid for it. What we are really seeing here isn't just some dry real estate transaction. This is a loving father strategically securing land for his son's future, very likely in exchange for a place to live and be cared for during his own twilight years.
So the crucial point is this stark and honestly somewhat sorrowful historical reality. John Underhill survived the colonial frontier. He survived the brutal winters, and he survived the deadly combat of the Revolutionary War, only to pass away from hypothermia in 1816. And remarkably, despite everything they built, everything they fought for, there are literally no known graves existing today for either John or Hannah. It's a pretty sobering reminder of how easily the physical traces of these foundational American lives can just vanish into the earth.
Part 5. An expanding American legacy.
Now, what's really interesting about this slide is that their story absolutely does not end in an unmarked grave. The physical homestead might have been sold off, but their human legacy expanded way beyond it. The geographic spread of the Underhill kids is just fascinating. Joseph and Jonathan move up to Vermont. Amos pushes west all the way into New York. John Jr. stays planted in New Hampshire. The migration of these kids perfectly visualizes the massive westward and northward expansion of the young American nation itself. They were taking that restless frontier energy and carrying it right into new territories.
And look at the sheer endurance of their lineage. Amos lives to be 93 years old. Jonathan lives to the unbelievable age of 96, dying in 1875. Think about that. Jonathan's single lifespan bridged the American Revolution all the way through the end of the Civil War. It's absolutely incredible. Together, this family produced at least 17 known grandchildren across the Northeast. One single frontier couple, starting out on a 60-acre plot, seeded a massive, enduring legacy that grew up right alongside the nation itself.
Which brings us to the end of our explainer today, and leaves us with one incredibly important thought. History is not just made by the names we see carved into giant monuments. It is made by families.
It's made by ordinary people doing extraordinary things in incredibly difficult times. So how many stories of ordinary citizen soldiers, farmers, and steadfast mothers like John and Hannah Underhill are hiding right now in your own family tree? It kind of makes you want to go looking, doesn't it? Thanks for exploring this amazing piece of history with me today.